Just a sec. I hope you guys are able to hear me very clearly.
This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so we have started the recording. All right. So, hello everyone. Welcome to this introductory session on Cypress by Isha Training Solutions. My name is Piyush Gupta. Oh, yeah, you'll see the name as Ashush Bathula, but yeah, I'm Piyush Gupta here, your trainer, and I'm very excited to guide you through this powerful tool for end-to-end testing, which is Cypress. So, before we dive in, let me share a bit about myself so that you can get to know your trainer a little bit. So, I have 18 years of overall experience in the software industry, and I have led multiple automation projects across various domains. Currently, I work as a senior test automation architect in my company. So teaching is my passion, and I've trained many professionals in Selenium with Java and Cypress with JavaScript. And I'm also a successful YouTuber sharing knowledge and insights with a wider audience. But let me take you back to where it all started. I began my journey as a manual tester, like majority of you, with no clear roadmap to automation. Cypress runs directly inside the browser. I would request other people to keep themselves muted so that it will be easier for everyone. Yeah, okay. So I'll switch back. Fine. So I was talking about Cypress. So Cypress is actually a JavaScript-based end-to-end testing framework designed for modern web applications. And unlike testing traditional tools, maybe like Selenium, Cypress runs directly inside your browser. Just assume that Cypress sits right inside your browser. Okay. And this unique architecture provides a very faster execution and better debugging capabilities. So we are going to be discussing some key points about Cypress. Okay, so I'll just move it here. Okay, yeah. So we'll be talking about Cypress features. So the very most important Cypress features is it is easy to set up and installing is very easy. So let's say if you're new to automation, you must be wondering, can I really install it without any external help? It's very, very simple actually. Right. In our next sessions, I'll be demonstrating you very, very simple ways how do we actually do it. So Cypress is easy to set up and get started with, whether even you are completely into manual testing and have no automation experience. And it requires minimal configuration and can be installed with a single command using npm or yarn. So let's say if you want to start Cypress from scratch, it will take you less than 5 minutes to actually get Cypress up and running on your machine right away. Okay, so this is the point one. Next, Cypress is very fast. So this is like a game changer for me. Cypress runs in the same environment as your application, means it has direct access to the DOM, JavaScript, network requests, and other browser features. And if there is something, if I use a particular term that you don't understand right now, don't worry about it. So we'll be covering so many topics, and we'll be also repeating a couple of things so that everything would be crystal clear for you. So don't worry, even if something is not really clear to you. Yeah. So when I talk about very fast, Cypress is an extremely fast automation tool, and it has no comparison with Selenium whatsoever when it comes to speed and execution. So this eliminates the need for any intermediary layers or communication overhead, resulting in faster test execution. So suppose if any one of you are from Selenium background, you might be aware that in Selenium there's a three-way communication. So Selenium doesn't communicate directly with the browser. There is an intermediate thing which is called as browser driver that sits in the middle. And because of this three-way communication, Selenium is little slow. While in the case of Cypress, it sits right inside the browser and it is extremely fast. Next point, Cypress. It has an interactive test runner. Now, you must be wondering what is this interactive test runner? So, I'll open Cypress for you. So, this is a very simple project that I've just created. So, I'll go to terminal and I'll type npx cypress run. Don't worry about these commands. I'll explain you in detail. So, I'll type npx cypress open. So, this is my window. It says welcome to Cypress. This is my Cypress test runner. It's even called as Cypress app. I click on this E2E testing. Now, on my particular machine, I have these two browsers, which is Chrome and Electron. So I can choose any of these browsers. Don't worry about this Electron browser if you're not aware, but it's like a lightweight version of Chrome. So I can, let's say, select Electron. I click on Start E2E testing. So these are some sample scripts that are already created by Cypress. I have not created it. Cypress has created it. Okay, and it is available to us. Now, this is the Cypress test runner as I was talking about. So it is very interactive actually. So it provides an interactive test runner that allows developers to view the application in real time as a test run. Suppose if let's say I want to execute any particular test, I'll click on any test, let's say. So my test has started running. And if you see, Cypress is executing so fast. In just a blink of an eye, in less than 4 seconds, it has executed how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6 scripts. And I didn't even understood what really happened. So it is extremely fast, as I was just talking about. Right. And there is something called as time traveling feature. Right. Which is again very, very important and a very cool feature of Cypress. I'll write it for you. Time travel debugging. Now, what is time travel debugging? I can see in my application how my application looked like when I actually started executing. So when my test started running, so this is how it actually looked like. Don't worry about all these commands; you'll not understand much. So, and I'm going to explain you in detail. So everything will be very crystal clear later on. So I'm going to initially I'm looking for this particular element. From this element, I'm actually making some kind of assertions or verification points. Don't worry about these verification points. It is just like a checkpoint. Okay. And now as I bring my mouse, it actually tells me what is really happening inside the Cypress. Okay. So this is another, you can say, control that I'm interacting with. This is the last. And again, this is finally another checkpoint. So executing with Cypress is pretty easy, and I feel that it is an amazing experience, especially interacting with Cypress. Okay. And next point when it comes to Cypress is like built-in Mocha and Chai interaction. Some of you might be aware what is Mocha and Chai. So basically, they are external JavaScript frameworks, right? In the case of Selenium, we have to integrate all the external frameworks because Selenium is like just a jar. It comes bundled with nothing, and we have to integrate especially with all the external libraries and plugins. But in the case of Cypress, it comes integrated by default with Mocha and Chai. We don't have to integrate it separately, which is a popular JavaScript framework. I'm not sure. My voice is kind of echoing to myself. Is anyone else also getting this echo?
Yep.
Somebody from Isha, like who can look into this issue? Hello, are you guys able to hear me properly? Because I was able, whatever I was saying, it was kind of echoing to me also.
Yeah, I
Some
think
point, yes. Yes.
Whenever you guys are speaking, I'm able to hear it very clearly. Actually, not an issue for me. Is my voice clear now, or is it still echoing?
it's still echoing. I think someone has left the. It's not on
Oh,
mute, so your voice is echoing.
just a sec. I'll see. Mm,
It doesn't say the name. It says waiting for name.
yeah. Okay. I have actually muted everybody actually, other than me. Can somebody now confirm? Is it okay now? In fact, this
Yeah,
echoing has not for me.
it's good.
Perfect. See, I'm also new to this go-to meeting. Even I'm also figuring things out. I've mostly used Google Meeting and Zoom, right? So all I'm trying to say is like, if I can mess up and if I can make mistakes, so you can, right? So let's move on. Where were we? Yeah. So I was talking about built-in Mocha and Chai integration. So Cypress integrates seamlessly with Mocha and Chai, which are popular JavaScript testing frameworks, and they allow developers to leverage familiar syntax and conventions for writing tests and assertions. So in our later classes, I'll be showing you, right, that it is so easy to work with Mocha and Chai frameworks, and their syntax is extremely simple, especially if you're, let's say, coming from Selenium background. You will actually realize that how simple Cypress code is. So why a lot of people, including me, why I do prefer Cypress over other testing automation tools, it's because of the simplicity of coding. Any manual tester who has no automation background, even he can start working on Cypress. I'm sure a lot of people must be getting a lot of hope with this, right? Because when I got started with automation, I was damn scared. Okay, so next, let us move on. So another feature of Cypress is automatic waits. Again, pretty cool feature of Cypress. Cypress automatically waits for commands and assertions before moving on. It has a default timeout for commands and assertions, which is 4 seconds. And I'll give a simple example. Let's say I open Gmail application. right? And I want to type my username and password, right? So if I open this Gmail application, but Gmail application is not yet opened, and my Cypress is going to type my username and password, ideally it should fail, right? Because the page is not yet loaded properly. But Cypress will actually wait. It is going to wait for 4 seconds for the application to be loaded properly before interacting with it. Unlike Selenium, which is going to fail immediately. It's not going to give you any reason why it got failed. But in the case of Cypress, it has got this wonderful capability of automatic waits. It is like a game changer. So this means that Cypress will wait up to 4 seconds for any command or assertion to complete before timing out and considering it as a failure. Okay, and another points. Yeah, so this was about automatic wait. All right, so next is network traffic control. I'm sure a lot of you must have heard about it, and Cypress is very good with it. So what do I mean by network traffic control? So in this case, we can easily control APIs, we can stub, we can test edge cases inside of a browser without involving our server. Right. Sounds unbelievable, right? Even without involving our server, we can still test some edge cases. You can, in fact, stub your network traffic however you like. I'm going to give a very simple example. In my current office project, so we have a very we have an application which is heavily, you can say, API dependent. There are so many APIs that are being called, and because of which each and every page takes a lot of time to get load. Right. Now, before proceeding forward, let's say if I'm interested in waiting for a particular API to get loaded, only then I want to proceed. That is actually possible with Cypress. So if there's a particular API call, let's call it, let's say, dashboard API. I'll wait for this dashboard API to be completed successfully without any error. Then only I should proceed forward. And this is possible with APIs, with Cypress actually. And another example. Through Cypress, we can even mock our API responses. For example, I'll give a very simple example. Let's say in our application, we have 1000 articles on our uh, web application. Okay, and I want to test how my application will behave if, let's say, I have just one article or zero articles. Now how do I test it out? It means I'll either have to open my application and start deleting articles manually one by one. It's going to be a very, very long task. It is not practically feasible, right? But through Cypress, what I can do is, Cypress actually sits right inside your browser, so it can actually stop the response coming from the server and in fact inject a fake or mock response into your browser, whatever we have configured, right? So if I've configured that, it should display only one article. So even though the server is giving the response as 1000 articles, Cypress will provide our mock response, or we can say a dummy response. That is possible, and we are going to cover everything in detail in our API testing sessions later on, of course. And then next, Cypress is something which gives consistent results. When I say consistent results, it means Cypress tests are very much reliable and flake-free. One of the biggest problems in automation industry is tests run today successfully, but if I run my tests sometimes let's say in cloud or maybe CI/CD, they fail. And it becomes very difficult to understand why the test that was working fine locally is now failing. Maybe tomorrow on CI/CD pipelines or maybe tomorrow in my local machine also. So what I'm trying to say is our tests are not really flake free. They most of the times they are flaky. So as a good automation developer, it is our responsibility to create not just automation tests but reliable automation tests that are flake free, that should not fail. And then another cool feature of Cypress is taking screenshots, videos, and test replay. If I want to do the same thing through Selenium, I have to write so much of lines of code, and it is not that easy. Either I have to go to Google or maybe ChatGPT or maybe copy from somewhere. But this capability of screenshots, videos, and test replay comes by default with Cypress. I don't have to write even a single line of code for all this. So that is what I'm trying to say. Running and working with Cypress is a very fun experience actually. Okay, so in the case of Cypress, I can view screenshots taken automatically on failure. So in case there's any failure, Cypress captures screenshots automatically. Or even it also takes videos if enabled of your entire test suite when you run your test on the CLI. And recording to Cypress Cloud and replay the test, it is executed during the run for zero configuration debugging using test replay. That is also possible. And another feature of Cypress is cross browser testing. So if I'll compare again, let's say with Selenium, in order to work my test on another browser, let's say Firefox or any other browser, I'll have to write at least 3 to 5 lines or maybe more lines of code. Again, in the case of Cypress, I don't have to write even a single line of code for all this. It is very, very simple. As I showed you earlier, right? Cypress gives me an option. Okay, I'll show you again. Yeah, it's all I have to do is simply select the browser and simply click start E2E testing. If I want to run my test on Chrome, and if I want to run my test on Electron browser, I don't have Firefox browser installed on my machine. That is why it is not showing up. In your case, suppose if you have Firefox browser or maybe Edge browser, it is going to be displayed here. So you can run your test on any of these browsers without writing even a single line of code. And it's very, very simple. Okay. And then another important feature of Cypress, which is parallel execution, which is something that it is expected out of every automation engineer, that we should know how to do parallel testing. Okay. And parallel testing or parallel execution is possible in Cypress Cloud. It is not present in Cypress locally. Why? Because it is a paid service. So some organizations opt for it, while some organizations don't opt for it. But it is a very, you can say, minimal payment actually. So anybody can easily afford it. It is a paid service. Okay. So any questions so far till now? Anybody who has any questions? You can raise your answers. You can raise your hand and I can answer. Anyone?
Where we can use this Cypress? Is it specific to only the Java-based application or .NET-based application, or any application we can use for the Cypress?
That's a very interesting question. Yeah, your name is Upendra, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so Upendra, as I mentioned earlier, Cypress is actually an automation tool that supports all the modern web applications. So it doesn't really matter whether your application is coded in .NET or whatever technology. Cypress supports every modern technology. So we can run Cypress on any web application basically. Okay. Any other question?
Yeah, only web applications. Only
Yes,
web
only web
application.
application. Yes, Cypress has got a limitation. I was about to come to that, but it doesn't support,
Okay,
unfortunately, it
thank you.
doesn't support mobile apps.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Because why I'm asking that question will be, but
Yeah. Any other question?
You said it runs within the browser
Yes.
compared to Selenium. Can you tell me the difference between that?
Okay. Your name is Kabita.
Right.
Yeah. So Kabita, what exactly is your question? So I didn't understand. You said Cypress runs inside the browser. So what is exactly your question?
Can you repeat that statement when you were saying that it runs within the browser? Something I think I was confused
Okay.
in that part.
Okay, that's totally fine. And yeah, so I'll always encourage all of my students to ask me any question, and don't consider any question as silly. Why? Because I'm not here to judge you guys and your knowledge, right? Firstly, so coming to your question, Kavita. So when I say Cypress runs inside the browser, just imagine that when we are executing the test, so this automation tool called as Cypress, it goes and sits right inside your browser, so that it controls the entire browser. Okay, it can control your network, it can control everything actually, and that is why it is extremely fast, unlike Selenium. Because if I, let's say, compare Cypress with Selenium, Selenium doesn't sit right inside the browser. There is something called as browser driver that we have to install on our machine, right? And using this browser driver, it actually interacts with all of these browsers. Suppose if you want to work with Chrome browser, then you need Chrome driver for that. If you want to work on Edge, in the case of Selenium, again you'll have to install Edge driver for that. In the case of Cypress, you don't have to do any of this. Cypress
I
takes care of it automatically,
see.
and it is
Okay.
extremely fast. I hope
Okay.
that answers your question.
Yes. 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 It
And
does.
yeah, and for now, since you are completely beginner, so don't worry, even if you're not able to visualize at this moment, which is extremely understandable at the moment. Why? Because this is completely new for you. So don't worry, everything will be
Uh,
crystal clear in later section.
right. So I do execute test cases in Cypress in my office. I'm
Okay.
not writing the code, but I do execute, and I needed some help writing the
Okay.
code this time. So yeah.
Okay. That is what exactly I'm going to be teaching you, right? Not only I'll be teaching you Cypress, I'll be teaching you how to code in Cypress. Okay. So any more questions? So we can take one more question before we proceed forward. Anyone?
Hi. Do we have a code knowledge?
Sorry, I didn't get that. Please come again.
Hello.
Hello? Yes.
Do you want a code knowledge for your?
I'm sorry, but I'm not able to understand what you said. Your voice is not clear only
For
actually. Hello.
learning this, do we have any programming?
I'm really sorry, but somehow there is some issue with your mic or something, but your voice is not really clear to me actually.
I think that's what I'm understanding is, do we have to have a prior knowledge of coding to
Okay. That is a very, very interesting question. Anyone else also has the same question other than Kavita?
this was question from I'm not sure I know the name, but I think she was
Okay,
trying to
okay,
say.
okay. Okay. Yeah. So if you think that
Yeah, that's right.
okay, fine. So I'll answer a question. So firstly, working with Cypress, of course, requires knowledge of coding. But even if you don't have any coding knowledge, that is where an external help is required, right? And that is why we are offering this particular training so that we can teach you step by step how to learn coding and how to learn working with Cypress together, right? And learning Cypress is extremely simple. All it requires is some dedication and some hard work. My responsibility is to give you structured coding uh, teaching experience, and what I would require from your side is just a little bit of dedication, just a little bit of hard work from your side. So just like a handshake is done between two people, right? It's the same thing actually. Any further question or before we proceed forward? Okay, I think Reena has raised her hand, but I'm not sure if I see her. Reena, are you there? Yeah, you can ask me. Last question. Yeah, please go on. I see you unmuted, but I can't hear you. Hello. Not sure if she's speaking. Anyways, I'm not able to hear you, Reena. So we'll we'll proceed forward. Okay. Yeah. So we just talked about some key points of Cypress. Now you may wonder, do we have to remember and cram all these points? No. As you'll keep on working, you'll remember these points automatically. Of course, you can just go through your notes. So what I would recommend is, like, when you are taking any kind of training, right? Maybe you can have your Google Drive. Maybe you can write notes, right? If you're a techie person, or if you're a traditional person, you can sit with a piece of pen and paper and you can write down the notes. Otherwise, you'll feel good while you're taking the training, but after 2 days, if you're not revising the concepts, everything will vanish. Even today, I still remember and revise my JavaScript concepts. Why? Because if I want to teach you, I have to be very up to date with my knowledge, right? So if I require a repeated remembering, right, and revisions, so do you. Okay, let us move on. So as I was talking about some uh, basics of Cypress and features of Cypress, there are some limitations of Cypress also. So what are these limitations? Let us talk about that. Limitations of Cypress. Somehow I like this whiteboard, and this is how I like to teach actually. Right. So first, single browser support. Cypress only supports Chromium-based browsers and Firefox. So if there's a browser that is not a Chromium-based browser, like if you know about Edge, let's say, Edge is also a Chromium-based browser. If I talk about Electron, that is of course as you can say a stripped-down version of Chrome, right? So Cypress supports a single browser support, and there's a major limitation of Cypress, that is it doesn't support multiple tabs. Multiple tabs. Yeah. So here, if you see here, I have opened 4 tabs, right? But in the case of Cypress, we cannot test different tabs. Okay. At this moment, Cypress doesn't support testing across multiple tabs. We can only work with one tab at a given moment of time. And lastly, somebody was asking me this question. So we can only support front-end testing. Cypress doesn't support mobile apps. No support for mobile apps. Is it like a big limitation? Maybe yes, but Cypress clearly tells that we have created Cypress only for front-end automation tools, so only for front-end web applications basically. So these are some couple of limitations of Cypress. Now I'm going to be teaching you how do we set up Cypress. Okay, in our next classes, I'll be demonstrating you, right, how do we set up Cypress on your machines, right? So how do we set up Cypress? It is extremely simple to set up Cypress on your machine. So what are the steps? I'll write down these steps for you so that it will be easier. So the very first thing is we need to have Node.js. Now you must be wondering, what is Node.js? So Node.js is basically a runtime execution environment for JavaScript. Let's say if you want to run Java code on your machine, in order to run Java, you need something called as JRE, which is called as Java runtime environment. Similarly, for running JavaScript code, we need to have something called as Node.js environment, and Cypress requires Node.js. So if you have not installed it on your machine, you need to install it. First, you have to download and install it from the official website. Okay, so this is the step number one. And then you need to install something called as Git. I'm not sure why I'm getting all these beeps, but okay. Anyways, yeah. Next thing after installing Node.js is we need to install the Git software. For people who are completely new to Git, so Git is basically a version control system. And of course, knowledge of Git is extremely important. And I see a lot of people still coding, but have very limited knowledge of Git. So ultimately, we need to have a roadmap, especially if somebody is actually planning to go from manual to automation testing, a long-term career in automation testing. So knowledge of Git is extremely important. And then finally, we need something called as IDE. IDE stands for Interactive Development Environment. For example, if you want to, let's say, code with Java, then you can use a tool like Eclipse, or I have this Eclipse on my machine. Or if you want, you can have a tool like IntelliJ on your machine. For Java, let's say if you want to run Python on your machine, then you can have a tool IDE like PyCharm or something. Or if you want to, let's say, run JavaScript code. For JavaScript, this best tool available in the market is Visual Studio Code. So IDE stands for Integrated Development Environment. Of course, you can write your code in Notepad or something, but using an IDE, it speeds up your coding like everything. And in office, right, in professional environment, we all use a professional IDE, right? And then in my case, I've already installed Node.js, Git, and Visual Studio Code. So I can just show you. Let me open terminal. If you're on a Mac machine, you can open your Spotlight by typing command and space. I'll open it again. Command and space. This will open your Spotlight. I'll type terminal here. For people who are on Windows, what you can do is you can simply open command prompt by typing CMD. Right. I can do clear. I'll increase the font size. Yeah. Now I want to check if I have Node on my machine. So I'll simply type Node space -v. I'll increase the font size again. Yeah. So it clearly tells me that I already have Node installed on my machine, and the version of Node that is installed is version 20.14.0. So my step one is already done. And with Node, we get something called as NPM. It stands for Node Package Manager. Don't worry if you don't know much about this Node and NPM, you'll get to know. So I also have this NPM on my machine. It is also a prerequisite. And NPM comes automatic when you install Node. So we don't have to install NPM separately. Okay. Finally, I want to check if I have Git installed on my machine. So I can do something like git ---- version. So which version of Git I do have? It is 2.45.2. Okay. And then of course I need something called as an IDE. And I already have this Visual Studio Code available on my machine. Okay. So this is like a prerequisite. Okay. And in the case of Git, we also need some initial configuration like setting up our email and name. Without doing this initial setting, you won't be able to push and pull your code. So I can show you again. For this, I'll come back to my terminal. I'll simply type git space config space user dot name. Since I've already set up my username, it is going to give me this output. In your case, if you have not set it up, you will get nothing. And then what you have to do is second command, git space config user space dot email. And this is my email that I've already configured as a part of my Git. So it means other than Node and npm, my Git is also installed. Okay. So without these two commands, I will not be able to push and put my code actually. And then finally, I'll have to install my Cypress. Okay. So what I'll do is I'll show you how do we install Cypress. So I come here, let's say I go to somewhere here, I can create something, a blank project. Let's say test project. Okay, I'll come to my VS Code. I go to file. Yeah, so once I have created a folder, what I have to do is I have to open that folder on my machine. What I do is I go to file, I go to open folder, and then I come here. Okay, yeah, so I created that folder here. So it is test project I have just created inside. Yeah, so this is the test project. I simply select it. I click on open. If you're on Windows, it's the same step. First time it'll ask you, do you trust the authors of the file? Select this option, trust the authors, and click on yes, I trust the authors. Okay, and you'll see this welcome screen. You can choose to close it. Okay, so very first thing that we have to do is we have to initialize this as a node project. At this moment, it is just a blank project, which is called as test project. It is not a node project at this moment. What I have to do is I'll simply type npm space init space -y, and I got something called as package.json. For people who are completely new, package.json is something that is an extremely important file wherein we enter all our dependencies, right? So now, if you're already sitting with a piece of pen and paper, write it down. This is a small assignment for you. You have to understand what is this package.json. Write it down. Maybe search on Google, search on ChatGPT or whatever. And yeah, if you don't understand anything, don't worry. Nowadays, with AI in our hand, right? And firstly, if some of you who are wondering, is AI going to replace us? It is definitely not going to replace us. With AI, we can actually speed up our coding a lot faster, right? There's and after since I'm started using this chat gpt and tools like Google Gemini, I've stopped actually using Google. And a lot of things, wherever I get stuck, I'm not ashamed to admit that I open chat gpt. I simply ask for this question, right? If at all this is a particular question I'm facing and I'm not able to find out the answer, I simply ask it and simply gives me the reply. So in this case, find out what is package.json, and then what I have to do is I'll simply type npm space install space package name. This is the standard syntax to install any dependency inside my node project. Okay. In this case, I want to install Cypress. So I'll type npm space install space Cypress, and I'll simply hit enter. And depending upon your internet connection speed, it might take some few seconds. In my case, it has automatically installed Cypress, and you see this dependencies tab has come automatically, and you see Cypress is installed, and this is the latest version of Cypress that is there on my machine. Okay, and the latest version of Cypress is 14.1.0. And the moment I install this Cypress using this command npm install Cypress, we get this folder called as node modules, and we see there are so many other dependencies. Now you must be wondering, how come all these dependencies are there when I just installed Cypress? So majority of these dependencies are like a transitive dependencies, which come automatically with Cypress. Because in order to run Cypress successfully, Cypress also indirectly require a lot of other dependencies, right? But we don't have to care and worry about all of these dependencies, right? So this is the Cypress that is installed on my machine. Okay, and after we install any dependency, we also get another file called as package log.json. uh, Again, this is like another assignment for you. You have to understand what is package.json and what is package log.json. Please write it down, and we should understand each and everything. Okay, now I want to install Cypress. I've installed Cypress. I want to open it now. What will I do now? For that, there's a command called as npx space Cypress space open. Okay, and there's a space between npx and Cypress and open, and I simply hit enter. So this screen that we see just now, firstly, it is showing me that this is the version of Cypress. I have not logged into Cypress Test Runner. That is what it is saying. I can log in, and I see these two options: E2E testing followed by component testing. So component testing is something for developers. Okay, so we don't have to worry about component testing. For testers or for QA people, we just have to focus on this E2E testing part. And it clearly says build and test your entire experience of your application from end to end to ensure each flow matches your expectations. So click on E2E, and Cypress has automatically created a couple of files for us. Initially, these files were not present, but after I open my test runner for the very first time, these files will get automatically added. I can simply click on continue. Yeah, and now it asks me choose a browser. Okay, so I can choose either Chrome, I can choose Electron. And what is this V? It stands for the version of Chrome on my machine. I can simply choose, let's say, Chrome. I'll simply start E2E testing in Chrome, and it has opened Chrome. And initially, I don't have any test case available on my machine, right? So that is why it is not showing any spec here. But in my previous node project, I showed you a couple of tests, right? Why it was displayed there? Because I've already created those tests. in that particular folder. So if you want to create a spec, let's say, either you can click on this scaffold example specs, and it has automatically added a couple of these tests. These tests are created by Cypress just for our reference. Okay. Now we see all of these tests here. If I come back to my VS Code, you see this Cypress folder, which is created automatically by Cypress. So we already have this entire framework that has come from Cypress. We have something called as downloads folder. We have something called as E2E. We have something called as fixtures, and then something called as support folder. I'll not be diving much into it in this particular session, but for now, I can just tell you that whatever test scripts we are creating, it has to go inside Cypress E2E folder. So these are the two folders that are created by Cypress. This is first folder, which has got one script .cy.js. And yeah, any JavaScript file ends with this extension .js. And second, we have this another folder called as advanced examples. And these are some couple of scripts that are created by Cypress. This is just for our reference. All right. So, and I've just explained to you that the moment we install Cypress for the first time, we get this node modules folder. And when we open the test runner for the very first time, we get this Cypress folder. And without this Cypress folder, we cannot actually work on the Cypress. Okay. Any questions so far? Anybody has any questions before I proceed forward? Any questions? Well, we are good. Okay, perfect. Let us move on. So, to summarize, why Cypress? Cypress is a powerful and modern testing framework that simplifies end-to-end testing for web applications. It has a unique architecture, ease of use, and developer-friendly features makes it a favorite among QA engineers and developers alike. For me, after shifting from Selenium to Cypress, this is completely my personal opinion, but it's a great experience working and coding in Cypress. Somehow I just love it. Hopefully you guys will feel the same. Now, let us switch a little bit on JavaScript part. So we have just touched upon Cypress. Now we'll switch to JavaScript basics. Okay. So I'm assuming that you guys know nothing about JavaScript, and I'll be teaching in a very well structured way all those concepts of JavaScript which are relevant as an automation tester. Otherwise, if you look at Java or JavaScript, it is like an ocean. You can take maybe 2 years and you'll still not complete it. But I'll be teaching you only that part of JavaScript that is required from automation point of view. All right. So let's talk about JavaScript. In JavaScript, we have something called as primitive types. Has somebody raised their hand? Not sure why it was beeping. Okay. Yeah. So we'll talk about primitive types in JavaScript. In JavaScript, whenever I'm storing some data, it automatically gets stored in a particular type. So there are a couple of types in JavaScript. We call them as number. We have something called as strings. Then we have something called as boolean. I'll move it here. Yeah. We have something called as boolean. And then we have something called as null, followed by undefined. And there are two more data types that are not frequently used, but they are still available and still we should know, which is symbol and begin. So if I want to store my numbers, it gets stored inside number data type. For example, I want to store numbers like 10, a negative number, let's say -5, right? Or maybe a floating point number, say 4.0, right? It gets stored in number. In the case of Java, like every number has got a different data type. For floating point numbers, it has got a different data type. So that is why Java and JavaScript are completely different. Sometimes people get confused, especially when I moved from Java to JavaScript. It was really confusing. Why? Because JavaScript, I feel it's little simpler actually as compared to Java. This is completely my opinion. Right. Now, let's say if I want to store string of characters, for example, I want to store my name, right, like this, Piyush. It is what? It is like a string of characters. So it gets stored in this data type, which is called a string. Now, in the case of Boolean, it takes two options only, which is true and false. So if I want to answer in true or if I want to answer in false, it gets stored in this data type called as Boolean. And then we have something called as null and undefined data types. These are also two data types. Null is like we can say called as explicit, wherein I have to explicitly give this value null to a variable. By default, it can never take values null. And undefined is something which is called as implicit. Suppose if I declare a variable, let's say, but I don't give it a value, so automatically its value is undefined. That is why I say it is implicit. I don't have to explicitly give it values undefined. So by default, all the variables have this values undefined till I give them a value. And if I do something like this, let a equal to null, I'm explicitly giving it null value. So null is always explicit while undefined is implicit. And these data types, I'm sure they must be pretty clear. And then we have something called as symbol and begin. Okay, any questions so far? Okay, so one more thing, let's say I open, let's say Google, I go to inspect, I see a window like this, right? So firstly, this window has got a dedicated name. We call it Chrome DevTools. Okay, so inside my Chrome DevTools, I'll go to this tab called as console. And here, even without having Node.js software, this browser is so powerful that it can let me execute any kind of JavaScript code. Some people might not be aware that we can use this console like even a calculator. For example, if I do something like this, 2 plus 2, it simply gives me 4. If I do, let's say 5 into 10, it gives me output as 50, right? So it is like a calculator. I don't even need internet for this. I can run my JavaScript code. This is my JavaScript code actually, right? I can simply write console.log hello, and it gives me the output back as hello. So I can execute any kind of JavaScript code right within my Chrome browser. Okay, so, and if I want to clear my console, I can simply click on this button. Right now, let's say if I do something like 2 plus 2 again, and if I want to clear my console, I can either click on this button, which is clear console. There's another option, which is something called as clear. Now, I'll select it from here, and if I just hit enter, it is not going to clear it. Can somebody tell me why? Anyone who would like to unmute themselves and tell me why it is not clearing the console by typing clear? Anyone? No? Okay, so the reason is I tried executing this function, but the problem was I didn't execute it without the parentheses. And in Java, if I want to execute any kind of function, I have to execute it with parentheses. So if I really want to execute this function, I have to type clear, and JavaScript is telling me that this is a function that JavaScript is already aware of. But since I'm not providing these parentheses, starting and ending parentheses, it is not going to execute it. Now, since I'm providing these parentheses and now I'm hitting enter, now my console is also cleared. Okay, so I was just telling you that. So in order to run such kind of small code, I don't even need my VS Code. I can simply execute it right within my Chrome browser. Okay, and then another important thing to note in JavaScript is JavaScript stores a precision up to 16 digits. So if I'm after my digit, so I'm typing one dot, let me type 16 digits: 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12 13 14 15. Let's say I'm typing 9, and now I'm hitting enter. Okay, so till 16 digits, JavaScript remembers the precision. When I say precision, it means JavaScript remembers all these decimal places. Now, what I'm doing is, if I, instead of typing my code again, what I want to do is, I just want to take the help of my Chrome browser. I'll simply type the up arrow key. It will show me the last code that I have typed, which is this one. Now, I'll enter one more zero so that it becomes 17 digits now. And now if I'll hit enter, I get this output as 1. Why? It's because JavaScript remembers precision only up to 16 digits. And the moment I go beyond 16 digits, it loses the precision. So this is like, you can say, limitation of JavaScript. But very rarely we'll be requiring this kind of precision, especially in our automation test cases. Okay. And if you see, we have something called as arrows, right pointing arrow, and then we have left pointing arrow. Left pointing arrow means we are seeing a returned value. While if we see something called as right pointing arrow, it means this is the code that we have typed. Okay. And then we do something like, let's say, yeah, spacing is not really mandatory in JavaScript. Suppose if I type 4/2, this forward slash is like a division operator in JavaScript. So if I type 4/2, of course I get the output as 2 with this left pointing arrow. But let me click the up arrow key and let me add some spaces here. Again, I get the same output. So what does it signify? That spaces doesn't really matter. So this 4/2 is exactly the same as this. Of course, it's looking a little ugly actually. We'll not be using much spaces, but of course, it is good to know. And then we have something called as a remainder operator. Okay, so suppose if I, let's say, want to do 7 percentage 2. So what is the output if I divide 7 by 2? Right, we'll get the remainder as 1. So if I try to divide 7 by 2 like this, I get the output as 3.5, which is correct. But I'm not interested in getting 3.5. I'm interested in getting the remainder if I'm dividing 7 by 2. In this case, I'll have to use this modulus operator, or we can even call it modulo operator. Okay, another thing. Now, if we go back a little bit, in our earlier days, we learned something called as square roots. Oh, sorry, not square root, something called as squares or maybe cubes. Let's say if I want to do 2 to the power 2, how do I do in JavaScript? We don't do something like this. No, that is not how it works. We have to do something like star star, which stands for square. So this is read as 2 raised to the power 2. If I want to do 2 to the power 3, this is how I do 2 star star again, and this is 3. So this is called as the base number, and this is called as the exponent, right? 2 to the power 3. Okay, and there is something called as math operator. I can even leverage this math object. So I can do math.pow 2 comma 3. It is exactly the same as 2 star star 3, but I feel this is more simpler actually, this one, compared to math.object. So math is actually an inbuilt object in JavaScript, which makes our life very much easier. It provides a lot of handy and utility functions which we can use. Okay, so this is how we do cubing. And then we have something called as NaN. So let's say if I try to divide 6 by 0, I get the output as infinity. Okay, of course makes sense. And if I try to divide 0 by 0, I get the output as NaN. If I try to do the same thing in Java, I will get an exception. In the case of JavaScript, I get an NaN, and it stands for not a number. And this is not an error in JavaScript. It is a very common numeric value, but it signifies that this is not a number. Okay, and if I try to add or maybe divide by 1, again we get this NaN. It is as simple as if I try to add, let's say, 5 with infinity, I'll again get the same output, which is infinity. And always remember that first n and last n are capitalized, and infinity is also a special value in JavaScript. Okay, so I think this was a little bit about JavaScript basics, right? And I gave you some small assignments, right? So very first thing that you have to learn is what is package.json, in case you forgot to write. This is one thing that you have to figure out, maybe from Google or ChatGPT. And second thing, you have to find out what is package.json file. Okay, and lastly, you also have to find out what is the meaning of intercepting APIs. Not just in Cypress, in very generic term. What is the meaning of API interception and how does it help? Okay, and in next class we can discuss about it. So finally, before we close, we have just scratched the surface of what Cypress can do. You have seen how powerful and intuitive Cypress actually is. Okay, and I know many of you might feel automation might be tough, or you might be thinking, can I really learn Cypress when I don't have some coding guidance? Right, but trust me, I was exactly in your place a few years back. I started as a manual tester with no structured guidance, but with the right approach and hands-on practice, I made that transition. Of course, with a little bit of faith, right? And I'm going to teach you in a very well structured way so that you don't have to go through that same pain, right? And in this entire course, we'll go deeper. We'll be covering real world scenarios. We'll be writing efficient test scripts. We'll be debugging failures, and we'll be mastering Cypress step by step. Plus, you'll get some interactive assignments, industry insights, and my personal guidance throughout. So, if you're serious about learning an expert in automation testing with Cypress, this is a chance. Let's take this journey together, and I promise you guys, it's going to be worth it. And please get in touch with Anita or someone from Isha Institute, and they'll be happy to answer any questions you may have. So, this is their website, and if I go to automation testing, I go to Cypress. You see the entire Cypress course content here, right? You scroll down here, everything is mentioned what we are going to cover, right? We are starting with JavaScript basics, and then we'll go to JavaScript intermediate. I have made this curriculum myself, right? So it is completely relevant and up to date at this moment, 2025, right? And then we'll be learning JavaScript advanced, then introduction to Cypress and installation and web elements and so on, right? So if you have any questions, right, please feel to reach out. And it was a great nice interaction with you. Please let me know if you have any questions. before we depart. I'm done from my side. Now it's my time to shut up and ask. You can ask any question if you have. Anyone? We still have 3 minutes. I'm so glad I covered everything on time. Any questions?
Can you please explain course content? What are you covering in course?
Okay. In this particular course, what you can do is like, firstly, this is the website, ishatrainingsolutions.org, right? Inside, you can come inside Cypress, and you see here. Firstly, we'll be learning from very basics from JavaScript. See, I just understand one thing. Tool is something that is, of course, important. But if you don't have the right foundation, if you don't have the concepts in place, what will you do with Cypress if you don't have the JavaScript knowledge in place? So learning JavaScript is extremely, extremely important. Sometimes I take a lot of interviews in my current organization. And when I ask people basic questions on JavaScript, then sometimes fail to answer actually. They know about Cypress, but they don't even know basic stuff in JavaScript. And I do wonder, how will they actually survive in IT if they don't have the basic foundation in place? So learning JavaScript is extremely important. For me, JavaScript is almost 80% and Cypress is hardly 20%. Extremely important. So we'll be starting with JavaScript basis. For example, JavaScript values and variables. I'll be teaching you what are let, where, and cons. Then we'll talk about control flows, comparison operators, everything actually. Right. So once your basic foundation is in place, then we'll move on to slightly advanced topics. So, and everything is built on top of the previous concepts. Right. So, and then we'll be understanding how do we write functions in code in JavaScript especially. What are function declarations? What are arrow functions? Some people, they have coding in JavaScript for years, they don't know what arrow functions, right? And I'll be giving you a lot of assignments for practice. And even if you're not able to, let's say, complete those assignments, we can complete this assignment right within the class. And then we'll be learning about function scope. What are global functions? What are let constant var behaviors, right? And then again, very important concept, callback functions. What are different array methods and how do we use them in real time? And then we have something called as miss features. Again, extremely important concepts. A lot of people I actually talk to, they don't know what are default parameters, what is spread operator, arguments object, rest parameters. Again, very, very important. And then asynchronous programming. A lot of people still are not really aware what is asynchronous programming, and this is something that is not at all there in Java. So this is exclusively for JavaScript. Something called as callbacks, something called as promises, something called as async and await. When I started learning, right, I went to YouTube and I searched so many videos, and somehow I couldn't understand anything actually. I don't know why. Right, I was definitely not a dumb person, but somehow these concepts were explained horribly, right? But it is my responsibility to teach you all of these concepts in such a simple way that you don't have to go through that pain that I went through. And then we'll move on to Cypress, right? And then we'll be understanding from the very basics how to write the simple Cypress scripts, and then moving on to advanced Cypress. Everything is there actually, so you can go through all this course content. If you have any doubts, please get in touch with Anita or somebody from Isha Training, right? Of course I'm there. If you're a part of WhatsApp group, you can post a query there. Whatever is comfortable for you. Any other question? I see so many people here.
Hi, Gupta.
Hi Nishant.
Actually, how long is this course duration? What will be the timing? Is it weekday or weekend?
Yeah. So I especially requested Isha Training that what we can do is like we can have around 4 classes in a week. Initially, we decided for 5 straight days, like Monday to Friday. But then I thought, especially for people like who are from IT background, it becomes very difficult to take out 1 hour every single day. So what we can do is like taking a realistic approach. I think 4 days in a week is extremely good option. Like Monday to Friday at 9 o'clock in the 9 p.m. IST, and we'll be recording all those sessions. So in case if you're not able to attend a particular class, let's say for a particular day, I'm sure you will get the recording. And it
How
is,
many hours will be? Sorry, total how many hours?
yeah, it will be around 25 to 30 hours. Could be little less, could be little more. So it is going
So
to be
for
very flexible.
so
Yeah,
for me, I'm not comfortable with 4 days straight in a row because I need some uh, time to digest whatever I learned the previous day. So maybe
exactly.
no,
Yeah. So
I don't think
yes.
it's possible for me to I'm telling you upfront that 4 days in a row is also too much for me. At least if 3 days a week, that is also like, giving a gap, or like
I
alternative days
totally
fine.
understand. But now, suppose if I let's say, okay, fine, I listen to Kapita, and let us make it 3 days in a row. Then let's say maybe Priya or maybe Ashwini, I can see a couple of people here. They say, no, Piyush, I really want to speed things up. I really want to switch my job fast. I don't need 3 days. I need 4 days. So if we have, let's say, a group of let's say 10 to 15 people, then we can see what things works best for majority of people. It's not about your and my liking. It is about what works best for the group. Right. And of course, if you still have some doubts, I would suggest, Kabita, you can get in touch with Anita, the trainer, right, from Isha Training, and surely they'll be helping you. It is their responsibility to help you out, guys. If you have any questions or any concerns, right? Any other question? But honestly, Kavita, it doesn't really matter whether it is 3 days or 4 days. Ultimately, if you are dead serious about learning, if you're ready to work hard, if you're ready to practice, then honestly, in the long term, it doesn't really matter whether it is 3 days or 4 days.
But after even practicing, right? Like for example, I learned today. I
Yeah.
need some time to practice that to be able to, understand and think. So next day it's again a new chapter or new thing. So I
Yeah,
have not even understood the previous things, and the next day start. That's what I'm saying. Everybody's learning capacity is different. So
exactly.
I would like to join a group that goes 3 days a week, and that also with the alternative day break, like Monday,
Okay.
Wednesday, Friday. So that is what my preference is.
No, that's absolutely fine, and I totally understand. Your concern. So what I would suggest is like speak to somebody from Isha Training, right? Tell them your concern, and I'm sure they will devise something for you. They'll surely help
Mhm.
you out.
Yeah.
Excuse me, excuse me,
Yeah.
excuse me.
Is it
I'm
Ashwini?
Ashwini.
Yeah. Hi,
So,
Ashwini.
how we
Please
can
go.
get the practice materials?
Yeah. So everything, see, suppose if I'm sharing you a couple of assignments, right? Either I can share on a Google Drive, or I can share it maybe via text chat here. I'm not sure like if there's a chat option here. I've mostly used Google and Zoom and Google Meeting. I don't see any chat option here. Maybe.
We have chat option. We have upwards like
Oh
messages.
yeah. Okay. Yes. Right. Right.
So
Yeah. So
you
we have a chat
simply
option.
share there.
Yeah. I can
Just we
share
need to.
here. Yeah.
Okay.
I can either share
Then
on
we
Google
need to
Drive or
do
whatever
on
possible.
the chat window only, that we can do on that.
Whatever works best for all of you. See, we are not going to be rigid. It has to be very flexible because I'm looking at a long-term association, right? So we
Okay.
cannot be rigid actually. How does it matter if the course stretches little beyond, let's say, 25 hours or maybe 30 hours, as long as you are actually getting value out of it, right? It is all about getting value. That's the most important thing I feel. Any other question?
So
Yeah, I'll stop sharing. Any further question, or we are good to go? All right. So I think it was a pretty good class. I really enjoyed. I'm not sure about you
excuse
guys.
me,
Yeah. Yeah.
will get any course completion of mail, like document from completion of
Y-
course, after completion of course?
Yes. What I know is like I have seen like Isha Training Solutions provided a proper certificate actually, but for these details, you get in touch directly somebody from Isha Training Solutions, and they will be giving a course completion certificate for sure once
Okay,
it is completed. Yes.
okay, okay,
And of course, like we'll be connected on there's this WhatsApp group, right? We all are connected over there. If you guys have
okay,
any issues, it's not like you can ask me only within the training. Suppose at any moment of time you get some questions, shoot your question in the WhatsApp group. Whenever I get some chance, I'll see it and I'll reply it.
okay, okay, okay.
Yes. And yeah, again, I'm not going to judge any one of you because I was exactly like you. I was damn scared. I was really doubting myself initially when I got started, and I was honestly not sure if I can even survive in IT industry. That is the background I came from. And if I can become a trainer and teach with so much of confidence, I think you guys have a lot of hope. Any other question, guys? And I'm really appreciating these questions. Thank you guys for asking me. All right, so let us end this demo class for now. Now, please get in touch with the Isha Training Solutions or whosoever has contacted you about this training, right? And they will be, giving you further directions. And of course, that WhatsApp group is there. If you have any questions, please post your questions and we'll be happy to help. Okay. Right. So I'm ending this call and I'll see you and looking forward to, get you on board. All the best, guys.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
for the.
you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you.